going on, Brian?
Same old, man. Same old thing here. Just doing my thing and enjoying. It's interesting on the day that a record comes out that there's so many people interested in what you're doing and how you're doing it. And we do a lot of interviews. And then exactly what you were saying, that you're hoping that continues. And now it's changed so much because promotional tours you have to fly here, you have a whole day here, have a whole day there.
Yeah.
And now, we're doing it in one day or 2 days or 3 days, and you just kind of hope that you can keep it going. I see the posts you guys do, man, and I've never really had a chance to thank you for just keeping my name out there, and I know that's the name of what you guys do, but there's so many artists out there, and the fact that you take the time to even just mention me, man, I really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. I'm not sure if you caught, what I was saying earlier. Like you were one of my entry points into R&B. Like my mom growing up when I was young, all she would play is Brian McKnight, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, and Toni Braxton. So like that made me appreciate good melodies, good vocals,
Right.
good instrumentation, and that came. I guess you're responsible for that. So we have to, you know, give you your flowers whenever we can.
Oh man, I appreciate that for sure. And I thank your
So
mom
let's
too
get
for giving me
absolutely.
good music.
Exactly. So let's get started here. Final album dropped today, Exodus.
Right.
Before we even talk about the reasons on why it's the final album, I want to touch on this body of work because I had a chance to listen to it yesterday as well as today. And from what it sounds like, being that it's your last album, it sounds like classic Brian McKnight. And it seems like you're just leaving all of this on your own terms. There's no conforming. There's none of that. It's just Brian McKnight.
That's right. You hit it right on the head. Even with, songs that are reminiscent of today, Sexy Body and a couple of those other songs, the main
Yeah.
body of work of this album goes back to the idea that what I do is what I do. And it really doesn't matter how much music has changed. It doesn't matter because if I do all new stuff, people will say that's not what you do. If I do what I always do, somebody's going to say, well, that's just what he always does. So to me, it's always about the song. If the
Yeah.
song is great, if the song has the things you're talking about, great melodies, great changes with at least a halfway decent singer singing them, then it should be great. And that's
Yeah.
what this album is.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And I mean, we got to talk about it being your final album because I'm not sure if a lot of people know you've consistently dropped albums every 2 years, every 3 years. So, I
Yeah.
mean, one of the things that kind of surprised me when we posted that this was your last album, and, a lot of people were like, no, this can't be Brian's last album. And then, the diehard R&B fan in me asked, well, did you check out the last couple that he put out just because the support for R&B isn't what it used to be? And that was kind of shocking for me. Like, how do you kind of take that when you see comments like that?
There's two ways to take it. You
Yeah.
have to understand that people have a lot going on in their lives now more than ever because we
Yep.
carry around our whole lives in our devices. And the same way when you're out, people kind of know who you are, and then other people know exactly who you are. You,
Right.
you can't think that you're constantly on somebody's mind, even though as a creator of music and of content, you hope that, okay, you see how many people follow you, you see how many people are there, but then when you post something, you only get a fraction of those people, and that tells you that there
Yeah.
are people out there who know who you are, who like you, but they're not so interested in you that it takes over from everything else in their lives. And that's kind of the way you have to see it. I think if you thought of it the other way, like, well, you weren't here when that happened, so why do you care now? That is not why I'm doing this at all.
Right.
There's only one reason, and since I met my wife, my
Mm.
priorities have changed. They just have. It's
Right.
about how can I make my life better with Leilani? How can I make her
Mm.
happy every day? And again, there have been some people that'll say something, oh, so his wife's making him stop. She's not. My wife loves what I do. This is
Right.
me saying, I just want to do everything with you, baby. I don't want to share myself with the world anymore. I don't want to, worry about records and how many shows I'm doing. And, we want to get up and go move to Paris for 2 months, 3 months, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to see the
Wow.
world together without having to be around shows. Normally, we look at my schedule and say, oh, we're going to get to see Paris. We're going to go to Amsterdam. We're going to this. And maybe after the concert, then we can go see something. Like, no, not this time. Now it's going to be
Right.
all about us and really having our life be defined by what makes us happy and not just by our work.
Right. So, I mean, people might not understand the grind that it takes to create an album, to promote the album. Like, just take me through the perspective from an artist. Like, what does that all entail?
You know, I'm pretty left alone while I'm creating. The work
Right.
sort of begins when you then have to go to the label and say, well, here's what I've done. Do you think
Mhm.
you can sell this? See, it would be
Right.
a great thing if I could just say, hey, here's my record and listen to it and buy it. But it really doesn't work that way. You have to pass it off to someone that you trust, and then they pass it to someone, and then you have to figure out how to get people to even know. You would think in a world where we're all so connected that all of your followers, once you have something, that you should be able to just go directly to them and say, here it is. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Right. And Brian, what was beautiful, we had posted that this was your final album. We weren't even sure if you were done with music, period. And that was kind of hard to believe because you've been doing music for so long. But the question that always comes up now is, okay, he's not retiring. He's just done with making albums. But what's the next move? I know you're going to spend a lot of time with your wife now, but
Right.
musically, are you still releasing singles? I assume you're still going to be touring once this pandemic is
Yeah,
over. Like, what's the plan?
we will still tour and I'll still create songs. I mean, I've had friends already hit me like, so all those songs you're not going to release, pass them over this way. So I'm sure I'll write for some other people. I'll write with some other people, but I really don't know. I'm excited for the adventure of not knowing what's next.
Oh wow.
You know?
And it's really cool because as I've been listening to your music now and just reflecting back on your career, one part that I don't know if it gets highlighted enough, like a lot of people don't know that you discovered Robin Thicke and
Yeah.
played a big part in developing Justin Timberlake as an R&B act. We knew him from
Right.
NSYNC, but you really integrated him into the R&B world. Tony Dixon, that's a good friend of mine. You
Okay.
brought him on into R&B and production as well. Like just talk about the importance for you as you look back at like being that person that helped open the doors for these guys.
You know, I never looked at it that way. Uh,
Yeah.
if Robin or Justin, if they never mentioned me when they were doing something, I wouldn't be like, oh man, that dude didn't. We were just all doing the same thing, and we all liked what each other did. After I'd produced a couple songs on that last In Sync record, I had known Justin since he was 13. So
Mm,
it was about the friendships that we had, not necessarily about, oh, I'm Brian McKnight and I discovered so and so, or I did this with this guy. I've never been that guy to say, oh, by the way, here's all the people I've worked with, and here's all the things I've done. If you know, that's great. If you don't, that's great too. If they say anything about it, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. I've always been kind of in the background where that's concerned, and I'm not really that. And that's one of the things that people always, well, why don't you tell people that you're? I don't know. I don't know.
right. No, I mean, you have done a lot for these artists. You know, even going back to Justin Timberlake's debut, you did a record on there, and it's just like, the impact of that I think needs to be highlighted more personally for me. But what I want to do, Brian, here is I want to quickly just talk about the different stages of your career because I feel like you've lived the highs and the lows of being an R&B act.
Right.
And I think it's really important just to highlight just how you've bounced back and solidified yourself as a career. But I want to take it back to the early stages of your career. Those first two albums, people love those two albums, especially that debut. Like, what was the mindset of a young Brian McKnight at that time?
Write as many songs as you possibly can. Uh, really stick to your guns because we're talking about a time when LA and Face and Jimmy and Terry did everybody's records.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. Those guys are incredible. I just didn't want to have anyone take credit for my success or my failure. I wanted it to
Hmm.
be me. And I found
Yeah.
myself at a record label that allowed me to do that.
Right.
So once I finished that album and it came out, uh, it wasn't excitement. It was just
Right.
relief because there was so much time that passed from the time I got signed to that first record came out. So, it was really just about, okay, now let's go to work. What's next? What's next? What do I have to do? Because there's no playbook that says, okay, once you put out a record, then you do this. You basically have to rely on your label. So I was
Yeah.
on a year-long promotional tour. I
Right.
then did an actual tour after that. So between those first two records, there was 3 years where I did nothing but promote
Mm.
and worked.
Right.
So that first record finally went platinum, and now you can breathe a little. But here comes the second record, And I'm like, okay, one last prize, a big hit. Let me do a whole record like that. Well, that wasn't necessarily the thing to do. The second record wasn't as successful, but
Mm-hmm.
it taught me that, you know what, you just need to go back in the lab. It doesn't matter what you did before. It's
Yeah.
about what's now. And then Anytime came, and then Back at
Mm-hmm.
One came, and then you're like, okay, I thought I figured
Yeah.
it out. So
Yeah, I mean that anytime back at one superhero like U-Turn, that era was like you were on top of it. The music was great, the timing was great, the support was there. Like just take me back to that era. Do you think you took that for granted? Because I feel like artists, when you look back at it now, it's like, man, those moments you can't relive those moments. It was a magical time.
yeah, being on top, playing stadiums, and
Yeah,
every summer jam for all the
yeah,
big stations. There was a certain amount of taking it for granted because you think that R&B music or whatever we want to call it was
yeah,
at the forefront of everything. It was number one pop. It was number one, everything.
yeah.
And then there was a shift somewhere along the early 2000s. There was a shift from, what was in the 90s and what became the 2000s, that you sort of started to see it begin to dissipate. And then you try
Right.
to hold on to it in any way you possibly can. But I truly believe that you get about 10 good years in this
Yeah.
business where you can be at your absolute best. And I think it really
Mm,
correlates with the age of the people that you're reaching.
sure.
Those first couple of records, those first 10 years, I'm dealing with people who are either 21 to 25 or 25 to 30, who don't have children yet, who aren't married yet,
Hmm.
who have
Yep.
all the free time in the world to do these things. But now as you get into your 30s, now you might be married, you might have children. There are just other priorities that take place,
Yeah.
and they're on to the next 21-year-old.
Right.
And you don't think of it that way, but it just happens almost overnight. And
Yeah.
then as you move forward, somewhere around 40 or 41, 42, it's the end of that downward curve. And then you meet the
Hmm.
love of your life.
Yeah.
And just at your lowest point, she lifted me to a place
Wow.
where it really wasn't about how many people were going to patronize me. Now, at the same time, streaming is happening.
Yeah.
All of these things are taking place. And when that wasn't the number one priority anymore, and Leilani was, then
Hmm.
everything started to come back. It's the
Right.
craziest thing that's happened. I know she's my lucky charm. I know that she is,
Wow.
the thing that has brought me back. I think I was on life support there for a second, and
Hmm.
she
Right.
definitely breathed new life and new everything into my writing, into the way I sing has changed, the way I view
Hmm.
everything, because
Wow.
she is the most integral part of my life, and I thank her every day. Every morning I wake up, I'm like, I don't know what you've done, but it's definitely been the greatest thing to happen to me in my life. I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm happy for the first time in my life, really, honestly.
Wow. That's amazing, Brian. And I'm happy to hear that you're at that point because I want to go, and we're almost out of time here, but I want to go to this is the hard part in your career, right? Where the numbers aren't what they used to be. You go from doing arenas to smaller venues.
Right.
Like, just take me back to that time, like just mentally, like how were you adapting to all that? Because that's tough for
It
anybody.
is. It is,
Yeah,
but for me, if two people pay to see me, I'm going to give them everything I've got, because they
right,
took their time and their money, no matter how many
right,
people that is. And that's the way I've always viewed it. I never took the size of the crowd for granted.
right.
I've always looked at it like whoever came tonight is here to hear me. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to shortchange them just because
Right.
it's not more people, or not that I've never looked at it that way. I'm just so grateful that after all this time, people still want to hear these 20-year-old songs, and it still blows my mind.
Right. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. So, Brian, we're out of time here, but being that this is the final album, and who knows what comes after this, a lot of people talk legacy, and we know you as a legend, but how do you view yourself at this point? You have a body of work, 20 albums in. Like, how do you view your legacy, and what do you want people to take note when they go back to listen to those 20 albums?
What I hope is that there may be a song that I wrote that means something to you.
Mm,
That's all I've ever cared about. I really, people talk about singers and how well I can sing and all that, and I think that's great. I don't take that for granted, but you don't have to be a great singer to be a great artist. Great
yeah.
songs will always be great songs. and writing the tunes that I've written. If there's one that you love, that's your go-to, then I've done my job. Now, if
Yeah.
there's five, even better. But if there's one,
Right.
I'm happy.
Yeah, and it's amazing because your songs, I have a go-to for sad songs and I have a go-to for happy songs too. So you've done both, and I definitely appreciate that. Brian, we're out of time here. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Again, just thank you so much. I know you're doing your thing there, and you put your posts out there. And when there's one of me, don't think that I don't see it, and don't think that I'm not
Right.
grateful for it. I may not always reply, but trust me, I am so grateful to even be thought of. Thank you so much.
All right, sounds good, Brian. You stay safe, and everyone go check out the album. And we expect more music from you soon, Brian. Cross my fingers
Okay,
here.
you got it. Thanks, man.
All right, you take care, man.